After decades of denials and pride-fueled silence, Scott Steiner has finally revealed the harsh truth about his career decline that fans suspected all along. The 62-year-old wrestling legend recently opened up about the devastating physical toll that transformed him from a technical marvel into an injury-riddled shell of his former self. In March 2020, Steiner collapsed backstage during an Impact Wrestling taping in Atlanta. Reports revealed he had suffered a cardiac episode, with his heart having to be shocked back to life. Paramedics were credited with saving him after he stopped breathing. This near-death experience became the catalyst for his brutal honesty about what really destroyed his later career. But to understand how far he fell, we need to look at where it all began. Scott Rex Steiner was born July 29, 1962, in Bay City, Michigan. His wrestling credentials were legitimate and impressive. At the University of Michigan, he compiled a 125-51-2 record with 3 consecutive Big Ten runner-up finishes. In 1986, he earned NCAA Division Numbers All-American status, placing 6th in the nation at 190 pounds. These weren't just paper achievements. They formed the foundation of what would become one of wrestling's most dominant tag teams. When Scott teamed with his brother Rick in 1989, the Steiner brothers quickly established themselves as a global force. Their style blended technique, power, speed, and agility in ways that few teams could match. Scott's technical innovations during this period were groundbreaking. He created and popularized the Frankensteiner, a variation of the Hurricane Rana, where opponents landed on their heads instead of their backs. For a man of his size, executing such high-flying moves was remarkable. He also developed the Steiner screwdriver, a vertical suplex transitioned into a reverse piledriver that became legendary among fans. The Steiner brothers captured an astounding 11 World Tag Team Championships across WCW, WWF, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. In Japan, they were called Triple Crown Champions, after defeating Hiroshi Hase and Kensuke Sasaki for the IWGP Tag Team Championship in 1991. Their international success proved their style worked across different wrestling cultures. However, cracks began showing long before Scott's physical transformation. By the mid-1990s, wrestling's landscape was shifting toward more character-driven entertainment. Scott faced a choice: evolve or risk being buried by backstage politics. His decision would haunt him for decades. At Super Brawl 1998, Scott betrayed Rick and joined the New World Order. This marked the birth of Big Papa Pump, an aggressive persona that would define the rest of his career. Scott later admitted this transformation was born from desperation and the need to survive in a politically charged environment. The character change was dramatic. Scott bleached his hair white, adopted chainmail headgear, and became known as the Big Bad Booty Daddy. His physique underwent a massive transformation that made him appear more imposing, but came at a terrible cost. While he denied steroid use, widespread skepticism followed him throughout this period. This physical change marked the beginning of his technical decline. The high-flying moves that made him special disappeared. The Frankensteiner was phased out around 1996, symbolizing his shift from technical wrestler to character-driven performer. His new style relied heavily on raw power and an over-the-top personality rather than athletic skill. Scott's volatile personality wasn't limited to his on-screen character. Real-life controversies began piling up. In 1998, he was arrested after allegedly hitting a road worker twice with his truck. He pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and making terrorist threats, charges that carried 30-year prison terms. Backstage altercations became commonplace. One famous incident involved Diamond Dallas Page confronting Scott after an unauthorized promo. The brief fight allegedly sent Page to the hospital. Scott's unpredictability made him an undesirable prospect for competing promotions, limiting his career options. His unscripted promo style became both a blessing and a curse. While segments like Steiner Math became cult classics, they also highlighted his tendency to go off-plan and attack colleagues on national television. These chaotic interviews made him a meme before memes existed, but they also damaged professional relationships. The Steiner Math promo from 2008 perfectly encapsulated this period. Scott calculated his chances of winning a 3-way match against Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle, arriving at an impossible 141.23% chance of victory. While the individual mathematical operations were correct, applying them to wrestling logic was completely insane. Scott claimed he developed the entire promo just 1 hour before it aired, stating his university education made it just make sense. By 2000, Scott finally achieved his goal of becoming WCW World Heavyweight Champion, defeating Booker T at the Mayhem pay-per-view. However, this victory came during WCW's dying days. His reign was considered both a bright spot and poorly booked and poorly executed. The strategy of making him an unbeatable monster left him with few credible challengers. When Scott returned to WWE in 2002, the physical toll of his career became undeniable. He was visibly hampered by what he described as drop foot, an injury suffered on WCW's final night. This condition severely impacted his mobility and in-ring performance. Scott later admitted he could hardly even watch his WWE run because he didn't even walk to the ring the same. His infamous 2003 feud with Triple H became a disaster. The matches were widely considered a bomb, plagued by slow, plodding paces that highlighted his physical limitations. While Scott's injuries were a significant factor, many believe Triple H intentionally worked a style that made Scott look bad, combining physical decline with backstage politics. Legal troubles continued throughout this period. In 2015, Scott was banned from the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony after allegedly threatening to kill Hulk Hogan during an airport altercation with Hogan's wife. These incidents demonstrated that his volatile on-screen character was an extension of real-life intensity and unpredictability. The 2020 cardiac episode served as a wake-up call. This life-or-death situation led to a profound shift in Scott's perspective. Following his recovery, he became noticeably more mellow and less outwardly hostile. The near-death experience prompted him to bury the hatchet with old rivals and the company he had previously sworn never to work with again. The most surprising development came in 2022 when Scott was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame alongside Rick. This was remarkable considering his years of verbal tirades against WWE figures like Triple H and his repeated statements that he would refuse any Hall of Fame invitation. The reconciliation was largely influenced by family considerations. His nephew, Bron Breakker, was rising through WWE's NXT brand, and his son Brock had been offered a WWE NIL deal. Scott chose to put aside his grudges for his family's sake, stating, "At some point, you gotta let it be," and that he didn't want to screw up anything for his nephew and son. This family connection represents the one positive aspect of Scott's later years. Bron Breakker has established himself as a major WWE star, becoming a two-time NXT champion and two-time Intercontinental champion. He uses the Steiner recliner as tribute to his uncle, continuing the family legacy in a positive way. Scott's recent podcast appearances and interviews reveal an older man still struggling with his past. He continues making controversial statements about modern wrestling, often claiming today's wrestlers are soft compared to his generation. These comments paint him as increasingly out of touch with the industry's evolution. The harsh reality Scott finally confirmed is that his physical decline destroyed everything he built. The drop foot injury, cardiac problems, and years of punishment from his transformed physique created a domino effect that ruined his later career. His pride and volatile personality prevented him from admitting these limitations until it was too late. What makes this revelation particularly tragic is the stark contrast with his early potential. The same man who innovated moves like the Frankensteiner and dominated internationally became unable to perform basic wrestling functions. His technical skills, once unmatched, were sacrificed for a character that ultimately consumed him. Scott Steiner's career serves as a cautionary tale about the price of reinvention in professional wrestling. While his early achievements with Rick remain legendary, his solo career became defined by controversy, injury, and missed opportunities. His biggest opponent wasn't any wrestler in the ring. It was his own inability to recognize when his body could no longer support his ambitions. The truth Scott finally confirmed goes deeper than just physical decline. He admitted that his own pride and stubbornness prevented him from adapting to his limitations. Instead of scaling back his intensity or modifying his approach, he continued pushing his damaged body beyond its limits. This self-destructive pattern extended to his personal relationships and professional opportunities. His recent interviews reveal a man haunted by what could have been. Scott acknowledges that his technical innovations during the Steiner brothers era represented the peak of his creativity and athletic ability. The Frankensteiner alone influenced countless wrestlers who followed, but his transformation into Big Papa Pump, while commercially successful in the short term, marked the beginning of a slow decline that he refused to acknowledge for over 2 decades. The cardiac episode forced him to confront mortality in ways he had never considered. Collapsing backstage, his heart stopping, being shocked back to life. These weren't storyline elements but harsh medical realities. The experience stripped away the bravado and forced him to examine the wreckage of his later career with clear eyes. Perhaps most damning is his admission that he knew his WWE return was doomed from the start. The drop foot injury made even basic movements difficult, yet his ego wouldn't allow him to turn down the opportunity or admit his limitations. He walked into that feud with Triple H knowing he couldn't perform at the level fans expected, but his pride demanded he try anyway. The reconciliation with WWE wasn't just about family. It was about accepting that his decades-long war with the company had accomplished nothing. His verbal attacks on Triple H, his public criticism of WWE's creative direction, his threats and outbursts, none of it changed anything except his own reputation. At 62, he finally acknowledged that burning bridges had only isolated him further. Scott Steiner's legacy remains complicated. His early innovations and tag team dominance with Rick deserve recognition. But his own choices, stubborn pride, and refusal to adapt when his body failed him transformed one of wrestling's most gifted athletes into a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ego in professional sports entertainment.